Philip Jakpor. Philip is a you need to find him in international spaces or national spaces. He can connect you to any kind of media space that you want. He's been working with Environmental Rights Action since 2007 and has been leading the media department since 2009. He has promoted the philosophy for defending human rights and the world's ecosystems throughout in Nigeria. He's been very active in the continental platform as well as on the international platform. And now he also promotes the program manager for a new organization called Kappa. In the next few weeks or so, you get to hear more about that organization. Owning the Struggle, which is mobilizing to resist nuclear power plants and geoengineering in Nigeria. Philip Jakpor, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. First things first, I would like to thank OMEF for this opportunity. I'm not just here presenting, I've learned a lot and I'm still learning. So I learned a lot yesterday and I believe I'll also learn a lot today. Basically what I'll be talking about, owning the struggle, is the high point of what this is all about. How can communities, how can civil society, what role can they play in resisting the dangerous suggestions that comes from the fossil fuel industry and advancing what we know as the real solutions? So the title is Owning the Struggle. Like I mentioned earlier, this is very, very critical. If the communities do not own the struggle, if civil society does not participate in the struggle, our hands will be tied forever. The fossil fuel industry will continue doing what it's doing. So we're going to share examples of how we've done this in the campaign to resist nuclear power plants and geoengineering in Nigeria. Next slide. I think the first thing we have to do is to reinforce some of the points that have been made by earlier speakers yesterday and today. And using the Nigerian example is very, very critical because Nigeria is a nation that has vast renewable energy sources. We have sunlight, we have hydro, and we have wind. But despite the fact that we have this availability, not much has been done to transit from our fossil fuel dependency. Government has continued to talk about diversification, but today we hear that the Nigerian government is still prospecting new oil in states of Kogi, Kwara, Niger, even Anambra State, and in the Lake Chad axis. That is happening at this moment. So it's evident that so far it has been all talk and no real or nothing concrete to transit from our fossil fuels dependency. Currently, about 86% of Nigeria's power generation comes from gas-fired plants. And this is not about to change soon because I think we have about 30 power plants in the country. About 26 of them are gas-fired. The rest are hydro. And I think what we generate from hydro is about 17% of the what we use in power generation. So 86% comes from gas. And then we want to look at the impacts of our dependence on fossil fuel. The impacts can be felt across boards: soil pollution, water pollution, air pollution, loss of livelihoods, public health crisis we have in the oil regions, and the global temperature rise. When we talk of soil pollution, for instance, what readily comes to mind is what has happened in Ogoniland and still happening. The soils are heavily polluted. According to the United Nations Environment Program, which conducted an assessment, which was released in 2011, soils in Ogoniland are heavily polluted. I think about 5 meters, most of the communities that were sampled. There's water pollution also in the region. The UNEP said something about they found benzene in waters consumed by the people in the Ogoniland, 900 times above WHO recommended standards. So it's evident that the people in the communities are drinking poison. A recent phenomenon, which is being documented, is the increasing number of dead fish on the Niger Delta shorelines. It's not even restricted only to the Niger Delta. We are also having such situations in parts of Lagos also. We now see dead whale turn up. And unfortunately, we've had cases of people even consuming those dead fish. 2 months ago, I think in Rivers State, that incident was also recorded. Millions and millions of dead fish on the shorelines, dead fish. And then, of course, there's air pollution in the region resulting from continued gas flares, which have not gone down in any way since this deadly practice started. Soot in Port Harcourt is one that is also noticeable. Then all these, of course, result to loss of livelihoods because we have ruined environments to fish and farm. People, their traditional source of livelihood is fishing and farming, but these fossil fuel dependency has come to dislocate the lives of the people. And of course, it is causing a whole lot of public health crisis. Some tests recently conducted in some communities shows that most of the people in those communities have liver enzymes, cancers, and of course, the environmental distress, which comes from the fact that something terrible is always happening. It's either there's one pollution or the other, there's one strife or the other. So the people in these regions where you have fossil fuel extraction going on are always in that kind of distress. And then importantly, which is one of the reasons why we are doing this, is the contribution of fossil fuel to temperature rise through the warming emissions that come from the sites where extraction takes place. Next slide. And in the midst of all this, the fossil fuel industry is like the devil that never sleeps. I like using that word. While we are talking about transiting to clean, safe energy, the industry is also talking about that transition. But the industry is not advancing what we call real solutions. They are always pushing forward what we call false solutions or false suggestions. And some of the suggestions that they have put forward in recent time has to do with what Nemo called yesterday the colonization of the seas and the colonization of the skies. Geoengineering is one of those suggestions, and then we have nuclear power, which has been touted as clean, but we are soon going to find out how clean it actually is. Then there's carbon capture and storage and carbon offset. They use a lot of big terminologies that people get confused at a point. But let us attempt to talk about geoengineering and then push to nuclear power, which is one of the dangerous options that unfortunately Nigeria is also experimenting. Next slide. Now, this is an attempt to explain what geoengineering is, but I think Nemo used the best word, which is the colonization of the seas and colonization of the skies. Some of the unrealistic suggestions that the fossil fuel industry is pushing forward includes carbon dioxide removal, which is sucking carbon out of the atmosphere. It's a very, very technical thing, which is like what we watch in science fiction films. And then there's earth radiation management, which is about allowing heat to escape into space. Solar radiation management, which is the attempt to reflect sunlight back into space. Now, in all these, when these technologies actually come to be, it will mean our atmosphere beyond the soil, which we have been talking about, which is heavily polluted, beyond our waters, even the atmosphere too will be colonized. So we might be at a point, they will actually dictate to us how we can breed or not breed, where we can breed or not breed, where we can transit or not transit. So those kind of suggestions fall under geoengineering. Then let us move to nuclear power, which is a dangerous alternative that even the Nigerian government is proposing. Now, like I mentioned earlier, there's this talk about nuclear power being clean, but how clean is clean actually? Nigeria embarked on this misadventure starting from 2007 when the former president Umaru Yar'Adua suggested that Nigeria needs to embrace nuclear power to meet growing energy needs. It is an irony, and like was mentioned yesterday, that currently Nigeria's installed capacity in terms of power generation, which comes majorly from gas-fired plants, is about 12,000 megawatts daily. And then we are only meeting up to 4,000 megawatts, while in actual sense, what Nigeria needs is about 160 to 180,000 megawatts. So we are far, far below in ensuring people have access to this lifesaver. But in advancing the solutions, the government has moved in the wrong direction. And in 2015, it began talks with Russia's state-owned Rosatom to collaborate on design, construction, and operation of 4 nuclear power plants by the year 2035. The first is expected to be fully operational in 2025, which is just 5 years from now. As most of us know, most of the details of what government has been doing or the talks have been in the shadows. Nigerians read about these plans in the newspapers. Communities where these projects are supposed to be sited also read it in the newspapers like the rest of us. I think I learned about it on a visit to Finland. Wikipedia says, for instance, that the sites that have been selected to host these nuclear plants were selected after due consideration. That is very, very ironic because our findings show that these communities are even as shocked as the rest of us that they have been picked to host what they don't know anything about. Now, Nigeria went ahead to sign broker a deal on this nuclear misadventure on the 30th of May, 2016 in faraway Moscow on the sidelines of the 8th International Forum of Atom Expo, which is hosted by Russia. And it was not here, it was far away in Moscow. So far away from where people will raise eyebrow, far away from where people who are going to be affected one way or the other are. So the question that follows, are nuclear plants worth it? Let us attempt to answer this question. Next slide. The answer to this is a categorical no. And why do we say that? I think you have to go back one more step. One more step back. Okay, forward. So are nuclear plants worth it? So let's move forward. Forward, yeah. Forward, yeah. No, they are not. The nuclear plant experiments in Nigeria, for instance, will go $20 billion each for each plant, which translates to about 3.9 trillion naira for each plant. Ironically, we learned that similar plants that Rosatom is building in Finland and other parts of the world, which is 1,200 megawatts each, will cost about $8 billion. But here it is costing 20 billion. We don't know why, because the information is not even in the public domain. Now, for all these monies that the nation is going, that will go into, supposedly going to building of these nuclear plants, including the dangers associated, only 4,800 megawatts will be added to Nigeria's current megawatt generation by the year 2035. So the question is it really worth it? No community engagement as far as we know. And when we say community engagement, it means taking the people who are going to host these facilities from the whole gamut from beginning of the process till the very end, including environmental impact assessment. No community engagement was carried out by the National Nigeria Atomic Energy Commission, which is actually the arrowhead of this initiative. The media has attempted to find out. At a point, we even got some journalists to go after the Nigeria Atomic Energy Commission, ask questions. What we have is information blankout. And then, of course, the company behind these plans to build the plants, Rosatom, has a whole history of non-transparent procedures, insufficiency of resources because it is going to fund this whole initiative, and a lot of on-site accidents. Greenpeace in 2017 did a report which showed a whole list of on-site accidents that have resulted from Rosatom's activities. Let's go back a step back. Let's go back one step back. Another step back. I think one of these slides jumped. So what are some of the issues that we have identified? Radioactive waste management is an issue. Spent nuclear fuel disposal is a big issue. For those who remember the cocoa toxic waste incident that happened in 1989 in Nigeria here, cocoa in Delta State, more than 30 years after, the fallouts are still there. So in embracing nuclear power, we are likely to see similar incidents. And then nuclear power can be very, very dangerous. Like we said, we all recall what happens in Chernobyl in Ukraine in 1986, and of recent, the Fukushima meltdown. And both showed how things could quickly go wrong when there are breaches. And these breaches could be human. These breaches could also be natural disasters. The Chernobyl incident was a human error, and then that of Fukushima was natural disasters. So we cannot actually protect the sites where you have nuclear power from any of these, and the fallouts are very, very unmanageable. Then, of course, like we have shown in terms of the cost that will be involved in building the power plants, and then managing them post-building, it is prohibitively expensive. And the nuclear plants today, as we know, are also potential terrorist targets. In a country like Nigeria, we have not done so much in protecting gas pipelines. We always have incidences of vandalism, poor management, which leads to rupture many times. Now you could imagine us now embarking on this misadventure, which a nuclear facility could pose. We already have the Boko Haram crisis in the north. We have militancy resistance in the Niger Delta. We could imagine where groups start threatening the country with cases of wanting to blow up these facilities if things don't go their way. So these are some of the issues that are very, very important that we must note. Now, let us move forward to how we have been involved in campaigns to take ownership of campaigns to demand an end to the false solutions and adoption of what we call real solutions. We have confronted lies with facts, and this is very, very important. At the inception of the nuclear campaign in 2016, we didn't just go all out to attack the government. We didn't just start churning out things that were not verifiable. So as much as possible, what we did was seek expert views. And these expert views come from documents, come from people who are involved in nuclear management. 2017, we brought an expert from Finland, Hida Siemens, who knows so much about nuclear plants, has followed Chernobyl, followed Fukushima, most of the nuclear crisis. And we remember one of our statements before leaving Nigeria was that Nigeria should not embark on this misadventure. Of course, we have also x-rayed the company involved, Rosatom, Greenpeace reports on the activities, and the fact that Rosatom is a company that does not engage the public. So for whatever you say, whatever supposed noise we make, Rosatom's response is silence. Their publicity strategy, like I learned when I went to Finland and visited them, their publicity strategy is no publicity. So you could imagine, since we started this campaign, they've not said anything. Their mouthpiece has actually been the Nigeria Atomic Energy Commission. And of course, we visited places. We visited the two community. We visited places in Finland where nuclear power plants are also being constructed, and sought the views of people involved before coming out to say no to these dangerous projects. Down here, we visited the two, like I mentioned, in 2016, 2017, because of our belief that those closest to the problem are also closest to the solution. Their voices, as far as we know, is critical to halting this initiative. We can shout as much as we can outside, but if the people involved are not part of the campaign, if they are not on the driver's seat, then we are going nowhere. We have also learned from nuclear activists in South Africa, Finland, elsewhere, how they engaged in this campaign. And most importantly, we have used creative media engagements. We've unearthed information and embarked on what we call a disinformation campaign. Since they will not talk, we have to expose what is wrong about nuclear power. We have to expose the lies about nuclear energy being clean. The question will always be, how clean is clean? When you have nuclear waste issues, you have on-site incidents that are hidden from the public, and you have companies that are not ready to talk, then we'll have to force them to talk. And how did we do this? We had a lot of articles out there. We put out a lot of press releases. We had interviews. And the emphasis was always on the exclusion of communities in decision-making power, decision-making in the power sector. And this paid out. There was also the attempt to engage government and engage the agency involved. Despite the fact that the National Atomic Energy Commission has not been talking all this while, when the resistance started growing, they already organized a consultation in December 2019. And I recall that HOMEF was actually in the forefront in mobilizing the E2 people to participate in that hasty consultation, which you could describe as shutting the ban after the, the horse has run out. And that was an opportunity for the community people to express their misgivings about the project. Their position was a categorical rejection of nuclear plants. There was a meeting we attended, and I think one of the community people stood up and told the Director General of the Nigeria Atomic Energy Commission that we don't want nuclear plants in our backyard. If it's so good, if it's so beneficial and clean, as you have mentioned, cite it in your own backyard, not our backyard. So community people started picking up, they started mobilizing, and then we moved a step further by identifying sympathizers in government to work with. It happened with petition to the Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly members, and sympathizers in the House also lent their voices. So we see a whole gamut of activities, actions that involved community people. This, the picture you see here, the first picture is an engagement we had in the two community. That was a town hall. with the traditional ruler and the youth in attendance. We also had the expert from Finland, Ida Simes, who was in a workshop we organized, which also brought a lot of journalists to understand the issues so that when they report from a point of knowledge. And this was a visit to itself, which also involved local and foreign journalists so that they hear directly from the people and know what the people want. Beyond that, next slide. This was 2017, I think. This was a visit to Rosatom's nuclear plant in Finland. You could see the officials trying to explain how safe the project was. This is the same project I mentioned will cost about 9 billion euro, while that of Nigeria is costing about $20 billion. So you could see here, everything they were busy doing was to explain how safe the situation was. But the communities around where these sites was located were all saying no, they do not want that plant. But of course, like Nigeria, the government is in bed with the Russian company. We could see these are community people from Itu during the hurriedly organized consultation by the Nigeria Atomic Energy Commission. You could see by their faces that they do not believe what the government is saying. They were all there with one mission, to say no to the dangerous experimentation. I mentioned earlier that we did a lot of media advocacy. Some of the reports came out in the International Center for Investigative Reporting with very, very good headlines. The second headline in Nigerian news says, scientists reveal the state in Nigeria that can wipe out the whole nation within these. That is very, very alarming, but that is the reality. That is what will get these people to sit up. So what are some of the positive outcomes? When people engage, when people take the struggle, the outcomes can only be like what we read here. So on the 12th of February, which is about 4 months ago, the Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly rejected the building of nuclear power plants in the state. And the statement of the speaker was categorical. Said the 6th Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly, can we go back? Through a motion by Right Honorable Nse Essien, member representing Ona State Constituency, rejects the planned nuclear plant and urges the federal government to, instead of this dangerous venture, they use the very right language, explore other available options and harness sources of power in the state. Yeah, something like that. So that is from the 6th Assembly. But then it is not yet Uhuru. There's still too little information from government about the nuclear power plants going forward or not. We have succeeded in getting, stopping them in their tracks in Akwa Ibom State, as far as it has gone that level. The Nigeria Atomic Energy Commission has resumed its usual silence. Information sent to them by journalists, information, we have a journalist who use the Freedom of Information Act to actually demand. Until date, there's still silence on this issue. Grassroots mobilization has been very strong in Akwa Ibom State, but yet to commence in Kogi. So for us, the Akwa Ibom experience is one that we intend to replicate in Kogi State so that the two sites that have been selected can speak with one voice and say no. Then, of course, there's next to no knowledge about geoengineering, which is another diversionary tactic promoted by the fossil fuel industry. To a large extent, what civil society and groups that have been anti-geoengineering have been doing is actually resisting the plans, talking about it. But to a large extent, this is also an area that is very, very technical, that will require a lot of learning from countries where such initiatives are also on ground to see how we can also escalate that campaign here. The alternative energy discourse is still low, and it needs to be escalated. But it is very, very important to note, like we have always said, that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. So we must continue to advocate. We must continue to use the kind of strategies that we have talked about, creative use of the media, engaging community at the grassroots, and of course, writing petitions and involving ourselves, working together to ensure that these dangerous proposals by the fossil fuel industry does not continue, and then that our campaign for the real solutions, clean energy, ultimately holds sway. We must always work hand in hand, and this picture we have shows that if we work together, civil society, community, we will not be defeated, because the people united can never be defeated. Thank you very much.